Hi, I'm Molly Moore, and I'm here with astronaut Leland Melvin, who has flown in space twice. And I have a couple questions for you. What did you study to become an astronaut?
Okay, Molly, I studied chemistry when I was an undergraduate at University of Richmond. And I always liked mixing chemicals together, and I made this explosion when I was a little kid. I blew up this stuff in my mom's carpet. So that got me excited about chemistry. And then in graduate school, I studied materials science engineering, which is basically learning how to process and make different materials for whether making tennis shoes or making space stations or making things out of different materials. That's what I studied. And so that's what helped me become an astronaut, those kinds of things that I studied.
What was one of the coolest things you got to design as an engineer?
The coolest project. Molly, I think it was when I was working at NASA Langley Research Center, and we had to make sensors for this vehicle, this thing called the X-33. It was supposed to replace the shuttle, launch vertically but land like an airplane. And I made optical fiber sensors, so glass fibers that actually could sense strain and temperature and actually oxygen. So if there was an oxygen leak, you could actually sniff with this sensor to measure oxygen. So that was really cool because we had never done that before, and that was our first time designing that, and I was a big part of helping do that. So that was really cool.
Did you use your engineering skills while in space?
I did, Molly. As an engineer, I designed and built things. I did a lot of training. And as an astronaut, we used the robotic arm. It's this huge robotic arm up on space station. We call it Canadarm2. And do you play video games? You ever play video games?
Yeah, with my brother.
Okay, well, it's like playing a video game. So I actually used that arm to go down into the payload bay of the space shuttle, and I grabbed this Columbus module, and then I took it out slowly and actually connected it to the International Space Station. And once it got connected, we could all work and live and float and do experiments up on the space station, biological experiments on people, materials experiments like I did as an engineer, all for helping us better our civilization.
What is the most fun thing you ever did in space?
Let's see, Molly, the most fun. Well, I took my water bag and I started squeezing out a water bubble, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And then my friends Dan Tani and Rex Walheim, they were like throwing M&Ms at it to go in it. And so this water bubble got about that big, and there were 3 M&Ms floating on the surface because surface tension holds them on the surface. They don't go inside. They start out, if you throw them, they start out inside, but then they hit the surface, and they just around the surface of the water bubble. And so then I grew this thing, I disconnected it from the water bag, and I went over and I sucked it up, and I almost choked on these 3 M&Ms because 3 M&Ms going down your throat is quite a bit, So that was cool. Also, working with people from all around the world, people that we used to fight against, and now we're working as one team. It was cool to have the first female commander of the International Space Station, Dr. Peggy Whitson, up there when I was up there. And also, we had an NFL coin. So we did a coin toss in space, and we flipped the coin. And what do you think happened?
It didn't flip over at all.
It flipped over, but it kept going up. So we had to do rocks, papers, and scissors to actually see who would win the toss. But that was pretty cool in space.
Okay, back to science and engineering. I'm in middle school, so what kind of things should I study if I want to have a career in engineering?
Okay, if you want to become a STEM engineer one day, Molly, you already like math and science, right?
Yes.
So just keep studying those things, but also as engineers, we build things. We built the International Space Station, this huge outpost the size of a football field, okay? So learning how to create, if you play with Legos, if you play with Mindstorm's robotics, if you have access to tools where you can work and build things with your hands, that's what engineers do. And so you have the theoretical part, your classroom part, that tells you how to do the Pythagorean theorem and all these different mathematical things. You'll have engineering classes, but it's all about building with your hands and developing and designing. And that's what engineers do. We create, we make bridges, we make space stations, we make roads, we make refrigerators, we make microwaves, all these different things that we do are all because of someone designing and thinking about it, but then building it with their hands.
I've only ever had the astronaut ice cream from the store, and
Did you like it?
Yes, I did. But I've never eaten anything else. So what other types of food have you had in space?
That's a good question, Molly. Well, obviously we have almonds. Here's some almonds. You know, and the way we do this is we actually use scissors and we cut this, but we don't cut it all the way off because then you would create more trash that's floating around that could get in your eye. So we'll just cut this partially, and then we'll like shoot these things to people. So almonds are one thing. Cream spinach. This is really, really good. You know, I know you have to eat your greens to stay healthy and everything, but you put water down in here, you have a septum, you rehydrate this, and see right there it says 2 ounces of hot water, and then you let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. So to let the water, you know, absorb into the spinach, and then you have this great meal. And with this, you only cut just a little small section, like right there, and then you can stick your spoon in there, and you can eat it that way, or you can just you know, slurp it out that way. And again, you rehydrate, you put the water in there, and you just let it sit for as long as you want. And this says 175 milliliters of cold water for 2.5 minutes. So you let this sit for 2 to 5 minutes, and then that's Russian. So for our Russian colleagues who don't speak a lot of English, they can read this in Russian too. And so that's how we actually drink our drinks and eat our food in space. And then also, there's some macaroni and cheese. So this is 4 ounces of hot water for 10 to 15 minutes. So sometimes we'll come back from our tasks working robotics and doing spacewalks, and one person will go back early and actually do a lot of rehydration. So they'll rehydrate stuff and have it Velcro to the wall. So when people come back in, they can actually have their things already having exceeded the 10 to 15 minutes or however long. They can have their meal. Cut their corner, get their spoon, and that's eating in space.